Welcome back to our show. Joining us today is Republican pollster and partner at the Terrence Group, BJ Martino. And next to him is political analyst and senior fellow at the Center for American Progress, Rui Teixeira. We have new presidential job approval numbers to take a look at. 2 weeks ago, our numbers showed President Trump's job approval at 45%. Since then, a few things have been going on in America. We had Michael Cohen's congressional testimony, failed nuclear negotiations with North Korea, and the Democratic-led House of Representatives voted to reverse Trump's emergency declaration on the border. But the president's approval numbers have stayed remarkably stable. Will that be true for another week, despite all the recent action? Let's take a look at the fresh numbers from our exclusive Hill Harris X Daily Poll. And we found the needle has not moved an inch. President Trump still has a 45% overall job approval number. 55% of Americans disapprove. The Real Clear Politics average has him at 43-53 split, and 10 points underwater in that number. So, BJ, the president's not moving. Lots of news in the news, and the president stays at 45%. What's going on?
President Trump's job approval is like magnetic north. You know, it may move a little bit around the globe, but you can still navigate by it. And no matter what sort of new event happens in the news recently, unless it is something that actually comes to a head, particularly with the Mueller report, I don't think you're going to see any sort of fundamental change in the president's number. It has to be either the investigation coming to a head there from the independent counsel or something significant happening in the economy, which is the one thing that continues to buoy the president's numbers upward is our good numbers in the economy. Keep that number about where it is.
Is there any way for that number to go up?
And there is only the opportunity for it to go up if the president scores some sort of other significant achievement, either in foreign policy, which appears unlikely, or domestic policy, which appears even less likely.
Now, we did this poll last week. It was after the nuclear talks broke down. There is news today that perhaps the North Koreans are rebuilding one of the sites that would allow them to do more launching and testing. So it looks like it may actually be even worse than after the end of the talks. But Americans seem to have sort of baked in maybe that Donald Trump is who he is, and we just are where we are, and the numbers aren't moving. Does that seem right to you, Rui?
Yeah, that seems right. I mean, there has been a slight diminution of his approval rating in the last week and a half or so. You look at the 538 average, he went from the heights of 42.7 down to 41.3. So there's a little movement. So you'll get these kind of dips and rises. But, I think what people would really be excited to see, for better or worse, is if it skied up to 48 or went down to 33. But it just seems like there's almost nothing that can make that happen. So this North Korean thing you mentioned, hey, it could knock 0.2 of a percentage point off his approval rating.
Yeah.
But I think that's what we're looking at. We're not looking at big changes unless, as BJ says, something really big drops. Like if the economy crashes, yeah, that's something. If the Mueller investigation comes out with something totally earth-shaking, yeah, maybe. But, absent that, we're just not going to see.
He won with 46%. He's polling 43 to 45%. That's where we are.
Right. I'd say it's a little lower than that on average. It depends on the poll. But yeah,
okay,
I mean,
40,
it's not.
Let's call it 42.
Changing.
But it's still inside the
right.
band of his election day number.
And it's been that way all through his presidency. So.
And we haven't seen that. There's been numbers that have been similar to that for past presidents in those 40s, with about 18 months out from an election. There's always that possibility that those numbers can change. And we have seen with past presidents that the numbers come up in that election year once they start engaging in their campaign activity. On the other hand, you have the Bush the Elder, who had job approval at 70% this time leading into his first re-election.
Have we ever had a president who never hit 50? Who never had a 50% approval? Half the country never approved.
Not in the modern era. When as long as we've been measuring job approval, we haven't had anyone who hasn't touched that.
Trump's the best.
On this, he's number one.
He's number one.
All right, there's a little bit more that we can unpack about what's going on underneath some of these numbers. According to a new Gallup poll, 56% of Americans approve of President Trump's handling of the economy. That's a record high, and his handling of unemployment is nearly as high at 54%. But his lowest ratings are seen on relations with Russia, race relations, corruption in government, and the situation in Syria. So, Roy, he's not doing well on the stuff he's being attacked on, yet his numbers seem to hold.
Yeah, I mean, all those things are things people rate him poorly about, some lower than his overall approval rating. It doesn't seem to be enough to drag down his overall approval rating. On the other hand, you know, he's rated much higher than that on the economy, which you'd think would be the most important thing. But another signature aspect of Trump's presidency is, despite the fact the economy, you know, is doing pretty well in most people's view, and he gets much higher approval ratings than the economy, it's not really dragging up his overall approval rating. So, you know, there's an odd lack of correlation between his overall approval rating and how people view the economy under the Trump administration. So, again, I don't think that's something that's likely to change at this point. It's not like the economy is going to get so much better. It's really going to start, you know, jacking up his approval rating. I think what's actually more likely is if we have a recession, it would really push it down substantially. Because I think that's one of the things holding up his approval rating, such as it is that the economy is doing well. It's just not holding it up very high.
BJ, I wonder if partly what's holding this up is that because the economy is doing so well, it's allowing Americans to focus on some of the other things they don't like about the president, which is why we can end up with the 2018 election result that we did. Despite we're having a pretty good economy, Americans still seem to punish the incumbent party.
You know, voters have a great deal of self-interest. They look at how different issues impact their lives on a daily basis. And right now, so you see things like the numbers on Syria and on Korea and on Russia, and a lot of those things seem thousands of miles away, both literally and figuratively to their lives.
Right.
The economy impacts them on a daily basis, but also they very much feel this sense of tension. These political and racial problems that are happening here in our country, these divisions, also are pulling them down. So you have the capacity, in a bad economic time, yes, it's the economy stupid. It is the only issue that voters, and they focus all of their attention and all of their views through that filter. In a good economic time, then we can begin to broaden the discussion about how much are we spending on education in our states. We can talk about healthcare more, and the discussion moves a little bit more away from cost to other issues. But the economy still is that one thing that it continues to buoy and provides the potential for President Trump to, if he's going to win votes, getting from where he is to his job approval to at least a plurality that wins in the presidency, it's going to be those voters who feel like the economy is at least doing well.
One more question for you guys before we get out of this segment. What happens to all the other candidates who are running in this environment? If you advise people who are running also, and you pay attention to what's happening with people on the left who are running, does Trump drag people down, or does anti-Trump lift people up? Like, how does this play for somebody else who's running? I'm running for the Senate or Congress this year. Do I care where the president's approval number is?
Geography is destiny in all of these districts and states. I mean, in 2018, nothing demonstrated that better than the different results of the Senate and the House elections. We had a lot of House seats where they were Clinton-held seats from the 2016 election, or ones that were on the bubble, and those are the ones where Republicans tend to have lost. In the Senate elections, we had places where you had Trump states. We were in North Dakota.
Trump steaks?
States.
Oh. I thought there were Trump steaks.
There are
bringing back
Trump steaks and Trump wine. It's all available. But those were the places where candidates could run with Trump or into Trump's numbers. So looking at the 2020 field, I mean, that's really what the advice goes. You first look at history as part of your destiny. What happened in 2016 or what happened in 2018 in your state? Now let's start from there, thinking about how your state or your district's going to look in 2020.
And does the Democratic Congress matter to Democratic candidates? How the Congress does, is that going to hurt or help some of these new candidates who are going to be running in 2020?
How the Democratic Congress does in terms of, will they have
fresh ideas? Will they be bogged down in impeaching the president? Will there be internal fighting between the older left and the younger left on anti-Semitism issues?
There'll be some of that fighting and some of that contentiousness, but I really don't think it's that important to how people are going to run in 2020, and at least their prospects of getting elected. I think a lot of it's going to have to do with the state of the economy, with the approval rating for President Trump, which I think at the margin is quite important to the political environment. And I think, people who run on a program that is popular in a district or a state and they're Democrats, I don't think they're going to be, they're going to try to avoid some of the more brutal, debates that may be taking place in the Democratic Party. They're going to try to run on something, as BJ's pointing out, that's, popular in their state, that's particular in their district or whatever, that's, going to reach people and get them to pull the lever in their favor. So, I don't see the divisions in the Democratic Party, such as they are, as doing much to, sort of make Democrats' prospects less good in 2020 than they're going to be otherwise.
Well, there's one more unknown that matters as much as anything else that we've said today. By the fall of 2020, we will know who the Democratic candidate for president is, and that person might matter more than anything else that we've discussed.
Well, we have it narrowed down to like 50 right now, so we're getting there.
Right, exactly. All right, still ahead. We're going to shift gears a little bit and take a look at the investigations surrounding President Trump. That's next on What America's Thinking.